Okay, the topic for our workshop today is building resilience for turbulent times, and we are certainly in some challenging times, and looking forward to sharing this content. This is a lot of this is new content for me. Focal Point International had our international coaches conference last week. It was supposed to be in New Orleans. Unfortunately, it was right here where I'm sitting and where every other coach was sitting. We had a nice virtual conference, but it was really good. And one of our speakers was a lady named Linda Hoops, who has a book called Prosilience, which is proactive resilience combined, meshed up into a single word. I'll show you that book a little bit later. And a lot of the content today is from that. And so this will be kind of, for those who've been on my workshops for the past few weeks, similar format. I'm going to present some material, and then I encourage you guys to participate, like to learn from each other and share some best practice ideas with each other. At some point, I'll quit introducing myself, but every week we have a few new people. So we've got a few new folks here. So this is just telling you a little bit about me after 30 plus years, and I'm not going to say how much the plus was, but over 30 years in various organizations, from Fortune 500 companies all the way down to small venture-backed startup that we can count the people on one hand. I've worked in a variety of organizations. I really believe in the servant leader model of how we are to act as people, as leaders. And it's part of what I'm trying to apply to these workshops, just trying to serve my community right now when they need it. Have been married for now a third of a century. As of May 29th, it was officially 33 years and 1/3. So, and then I've got two kids, and they're both married. So we've got a nice brood going. No grandkids yet, though. And yes, for those who know, I'm a business coach, but right now I feel more like a business therapist. So I've been using this moniker during these times. It seems to apply and resonate with folks. And just a reminder, I am recording, and the goal here today is to inspire you, to encourage you, to hopefully give you at least one good idea, and hopefully get some good ideas from you by sharing, like I said, some pretty interesting content from this book that I really just picked up last week, and so we're kind of learning it together. This is my first time to share it. Also, several of you have been on my these before, and you know I've talked about this graph because I think it's so fitting for where we are. I'm trying to help people move from the left to the right, move from that zone of fear where we're hoarding and we're worried and we're complaining into through the learning zone where we have more control of our emotions, where we acknowledge that we're all trying to do the best we can, and I basically let go of things that are outside my control. And we're going to talk about some of that today. That's part of resilience, and moving into that growth zone where I have empathy and where I find purpose and meaning. And really, when we're talking about resilience, resilient people are living in the growth zone. And you're going to see a lot of parallels to what we talk about there. And in this chart, the phases of the pandemic, I am pronouncing, you can put it in your book, John Jennings pronouncing, we are now moving into phase 3. I truly believe it. We've started, at least here in Kentucky, we've started to open up some businesses. We started opening up some healthcare businesses yesterday. And so we are starting the path of returning to normalcy. Yeah, we're just barely into it, but I really do believe we're in it. That's exciting because I think we all want to get there. So I'm going to do like I do in all my workshops. I'm going to kind of set up the problem and the opportunity and kind of the premise behind what I'm going to talk about today, and then open it up for some comment before we get into the material. So first of all, we have taken a punch, and we feel kind of like that guy right there. We've taken quite a punch. It's not, there's no doubt that this is probably the toughest thing any of us have faced in business and life, because I don't think any of us were alive during World War II or the Great Depression. So I believe this is by far the worst thing we've had to live with. And uncertainty reigns. Right now we have much more uncertainty than clarity. And we preach clarity all the time with Focal Point, and we don't have a lot of clarity right now. So, folks, when you don't have certainty, people get nervous and get scared. And current conditions are bad for companies. I just heard Kentucky was one of the top 3 states in unemployment. So most of you are here in the Kentucky area. We're not doing well, and everything from bankruptcies and everything, and mental health issues, suicides, all kinds of things. All these numbers are really going the wrong direction, and so it can be scary. And we're kind of afraid of the new normal. I hope you like that picture. I thought that's maybe where we're going to be someday. At least, we just got back from running to the grocery store, and everybody had a mask on except us. And so felt like, are we not part of the? We didn't get the memo, I guess. But we seem to be heading this direction. But there's an opportunity. It doesn't have to be that way. The strong will survive out of this. Survival of the fittest is alive and well, and is, I believe, going to be true in this as well. So we need to be strong, and there are skills that can be developed. This is stuff that we can all learn and strengthen and get better at. Not overnight. It's going to take some effort. In fact, it's going to take effort. Yeah, I posed for that last week, just in case you wondered. That's me on my rooftop. It's, you don't recognize the skyline, and we can be resilient, and that's what I want to talk about today: resilience. So, what is resilience? Linda defined resilience as this: maintaining high levels of effectiveness and well-meaning while dealing with high levels of challenge and disruption. And boy, challenge and disruption. That's if that's not words that describe where we are, I don't know what is. And so it's what we want to be. We want to be able to maintain our effectiveness and our well-meaning, our purpose, while dealing with these challenges. So here's the big idea, and we were talking about this. Well, some of you may have been coming on. I use this picture as an example of resilience. I actually wrote a blog about resilience back in January, having no idea what we were going to be facing and how important resilience was. But I did ask in some of my emails, I tried to get people to guess at what this was. I had some interesting guesses. It's not the flux capacitor from Back to the Future. I just heard one, was that Mike, who said thought it looked like the inside of a tire thing inside the trunk of your car. Someone said it looked like a clock. The closest guess that wasn't right was a pendulum, because it is essentially a pendulum. But specifically what it is, it's from a building, Taipei 101, the iconic skyscraper in Taiwan. There's a picture of it there on the left. It rises 1,700 feet. It's nearly 6 football fields. And in 2004, when it was built, it was the tallest building in the world. Now, ironically, or terrifyingly, it's located about 600 feet away from a seismic fault and located in an area that deals with severe wind gusts. So you got the combination of faults and seismic activity in the Pacific Rim, along with high winds. And so the engineers had to come up with a solution, and they how to counteract these forces of earthquakes and winds. In other words, they needed to figure out how to make this building resilient. And so they designed this enormous tuned mass damper. That is a damper, is what that is, to be technical. It's 18 feet wide, 728 tons of steel, 728 tons of steel. And it's suspended between the 87th and 92nd floor. So there's a little picture of where it is. It's actually, if you look at the building in total, it's a tiny percentage of the building. But what it does, it sways to counteract what's going on with the building. And if you go out and Google Taipei 101 damper movement, you'll see video of people there while on their cell phones and stuff, recording it swaying. Really freaks me out. I don't think I'd want to be there. But It's a great example of resilience. So resilience is really about energy and deploying our energy in right ways, effective ways. So I want to get a little bit of input here. We're dealing with crisis and stress and all these things, and all this stuff takes energy. And we're going to talk a little bit later about forms of energy, but getting through struggles requires responding like that damper, responding, adjusting, and using our energy to bounce back. So I'd like to just have you guys come off mute. I'm going to unmute everybody. That if you're self-muted, I can't unmute you. But we'd love to hear from some of you on what this image, what does resilience mean to you? How are you dealing with that topic of resilience right now? Just love to get some input.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Rob.
Good to see you, man. Sorry for the technical difficulties
You're good.
early on. I would say, we go to a spiritual fellowship together, and we always talk about the word endurance. And I'm a KISS guy, keep it simple, stupid. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I'm not going to do deep dives on anything. But I would say resilience to me is like endurance. And I'm actually going to look up those two words. Hey, Ken Blum, you need to mute, man.
All right.
What's up, Ken? But seriously,
Yeah. No,
I'm actually going to look those two words up. But we talk about endurance, and we talk about people that have had challenges, and if you're resilient, to me, you also have endurance, and I mean, I don't know, like Robert Schuller said, tough times don't last, tough people do.
Yeah.
And I just think that this is going to be an opportunity for folks to look at things differently, know that there's going to be setbacks, but if we stay grounded, working hard, using core values that you've instilled in me recently through some of your coaching, that it's going to be okay. And the things that aren't okay sometimes are blessings. I mean, not sometimes, a lot of times.
Good.
I mean, my example is if you're a restaurant owner and this brought you down, maybe it's a good thing that you can have a new opportunity to do something different or start over or whatever. So
that's a great example of a resilient type attitude. Anybody else have a comment about resilience and how they're trying to apply it?
I have one kind of what Rob said, maybe saying it a different way. I found in the last 10 to 20 years, we spent a lot of time as a culture worrying about things that have very little relevance to our overall life and importance. And we've become sort of politically, I'm not trying to get into politics here because it applies to both sides, but we get politically correct, and there's a right way to say stuff and a wrong way to say stuff. When you put stuff in perspective of today, a lot of that becomes really irrelevant. When you look at it, if I can't put food on the table, if I worry about whether my son and daughter and best friend's going to be alive, maybe going forward, it'll particularly our older generation grew up through the Depression and grew up through World War II, where they had to fight with these things. Mm-hmm. I was kind of slightly after that, and my kids didn't have anything to know about it. And I think it's going to give us an opportunity to really look at what's important and maybe kind of put things by the wayside. It's not all that important in the overall scheme of things. Good.
Yeah, but both of you guys kind of talked about, this idea of endurance and strength and mustering through, and that's part of what we're going to talk about is the muscles required for resilience. So great, thank you for that input, guys. So we're going to talk about 4 key points. I think Linda calls these 4 building blocks, but we're going to talk about the first one here is calmness. And now I have to tell you, when I get upset, the worst thing tell me to do is to calm down. I kind of bristle up when I'm mad, when I'm frustrated, and I share it with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, it'll be fine." I mean, that just really can get on my nerve. But this is about not being calm necessarily in a situation. This is about having a mindset of calmness throughout our life. And we know that resilient people, one of the things about them is that they don't scream in fear and run out of the room. They have developed an ability to withstand an impact and keep on going, and not buckle at the first punch, not burst out in tears or flames or anything else with the first sign of trouble. And so I want to share just a couple of the principles that she talks about. First of all, it is not laziness. Calmness should not be equated with the idea of laziness or being unattached or aloof. It's not sleepy or boring or uninterested. She actually describes it as a positive, alert, emotional state. And if you're calm, it doesn't mean that you're snoozing at the wheel. It just means that you're not in a constant reactionary panic mode. And this is the first thing from the standpoint of resilience, is to not immediately jump into the fire. Is coming in, the walls are crashing in, everything's falling apart. People who are calm have this calm nature about them. Do not do that. And so some of the techniques for this, and this ties in directly with emotional intelligence. Some of you may have been in some of my emotional intelligence workshops. We talk about all these same things. It ties into the first two components of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness and self-control. And that's really, I think, if you think about calmness, that's really a pretty good definition of it: self-awareness and self-control. So some of the techniques we talk about one is meditation and mindfulness. If you haven't done that and you're stressed, it's something I really encourage doing. I wish I was better at practicing it than I am. I think Greg Pestinger is on. Greg is one of my mentors, and he's excellent at it. I try to mimic him a little bit, but it's a great technique to practice that in the morning, especially. It's a great way to start your day. Prayer and devotion, that's one of the things that I feel like I do have pretty good handle on. I start out almost every morning with a group at 6:30, spending some time in devotion and prayer together. Exercise and walks. After this is done, I'm going to relax a little bit by going with my wife on a little walk around the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to take advantage of it. And that is another, when I get out and even if we just walk a mile, I feel more calm, more relaxed, and then also energized to go on. Breathing techniques, taking time for just deep cleansing breaths, pausing. One of the things I've been reading a lot the last few days is about how this quarantine working at home thing is actually really getting on, taking some people to some extremes, because they can't separate business from personal. And so they're working constantly. They feel like they work all day long and they can't get away from it. Sometimes you need to pause. Working from home doesn't mean you work the entire time at home. So, feeling comfortable, feeling confident enough to hit pause occasionally and just relax. And then tapping into your creative side is another way of promoting calmness if you're a creative person. If you're not a creative person, it can be the other extreme. But for me, music, the right kind of music can be very calming for me. If I'm stressed, sometimes I can listen to music and it will help me get some sleep or whatever. Various arts, various creative ways are techniques for promoting calmness. And then the final point is to recognize your triggers. And the triggers are those things that happen when you start to feel like you're losing control of that calm nature. For me, it's in my gut, in my stomach. If I'm feeling like I'm losing it a little bit, it usually starts with a nauseous pit in my stomach. Other people, it's in their head. Other people, they break out in a cold sweat. Recognizing that early is good and healthy, because if you have the techniques to try to calm down, you can hopefully get yourself, off that ledge, so to speak, and avoid the spirals. You know what I mean by the spirals. That's when you start thinking one negative thing, and that leads you to think of another negative thing, which then leads you to another one. At Focal Point, we teach this idea of the law of self-control. I don't have an image of it, but basically it's the concept that where we think, where we focus our attention is where we're going to end up. So if we have our vision, if our eyes set upward to growing and to improving, to reaching the summit, then we're going to go that way. If we have our mind and our eyes down into the valley of despair, thinking everything's negative, everything's going to be bad, guess what? We're probably going to end that way. We're probably going to end up where we think about the most. And so let's talk a moment about calmness. I know I've got some great calm people in here. Actually, I'm joking because a couple of you I know are anything but that. But I'm a self-disclosed, often stressed person, and so this is I am preaching to myself here. Come off mute if you'd like to share something. Love to hear either side, someone who struggles with this or someone who's really good at it. I'd love to hear your input on how we can learn from you.
And John, for me, there are times when I just can't stop. And I don't know if it's because I'm afraid of stopping and having the downtime to think about everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But I do, I've got a Fitbit and it nudges me every hour to get up and walk, which is good.
Yeah.
Because I'll do that and then I'll just kind of step away for a while, or maybe break out the watercolors and paint and try to forget about everything that's going on.
There's the creativity part. Good.
Yeah. That's how I deal with it.
Good. Dave Brown, I saw you came off mute. What do you have to say?
I did. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today, John. I do appreciate being with these other professionals. Regarding what you asked, I don't know if it's the spirit working or if it's just a coincidence. I don't know how everybody views that, but I'm actually going to be speaking on a similar topic this Thursday and speaking to other business owners about how to manage stress, which is interesting. So I'm very grateful you pointed it out. I don't believe I am the best at this. I will say that I've learned a lot from practice and error, and I think that you've got to figure out what works best for you. Not everybody's going to have the same approach to dealing with their situation. And so for me, I do believe in breathing and trying to just calm my mind. You said something earlier, John, that I actually teach all the time. It's the power of the pause, learning how to pause and treasure that. And so just want to thank you for that. I'm definitely all ears to whatever the other professionals are going to share, but that's what I do. I try to pause and practice on breathing.
Anyone else have a thought about calmness techniques or meditation?
Just a personal experience that I actually purchased a tool. It's put a little thing on your earlobe, and it actually measures the intervals between I can't explain the technology. Okay. But it actually measures your stress level, and I've read the scientific proof behind it. And what I've learned is I have no clue when I'm stressed and when I'm not stressed. I'll wake up some morning and I'll get 100% score. I'm totally relaxed. The next morning I'll wake up and I got this really low score, and I have no perception of one's any different than the other. So wow, I grew up with stress, and and some of the companies I used to work for, they used to manage stress. They felt stress was good for everybody getting things done. So I grew up in that kind of mode. So it's a hard adjustment for me to even realize when I'm stressed and not stressed.
Right.
But I'm learning. I'm getting better scores, but I don't know why, or I can't tell you when I am stressed and not stressed.
Well, awareness is a big part of it, and being aware of when you're stressed. So a story just from the last couple of days on, I've been trying to get the PPP loan, wasn't able to get it in round one due to some personal things. Some of you know my mother passed away and everything, and I wasn't able to get the PPP loan in the first round. I got it submitted, but it didn't. They ran out of money before it got submitted to the SBA. So 2 days before round two opens up, the bank I had lined it up with said, "Oh, sorry, we're not going to process yours. Um, because I wasn't a existing customer of theirs." And so I'm scrambling over the weekend trying to find another bank to work with me. And I was striking out. And someone said, "Hey, John, try Stockyards Bank. I'm going to do a commercial for Stockyards Bank now." I knew one guy there, not real well, but I reached out to him on Sunday, and we talked Monday morning, and we started talking Monday morning at 11, and at 7 o'clock last night, he called me to tell me it had been approved by the SBA. So I did a happy dance, and I've been telling everybody about how great Stockyards Bank is now. He went above and beyond for me, but I know Sunday, my stomach was absolutely, I was torn up, because it went from thinking I would have a shot at this to having no hope, is the way I felt, had no hope, to working through it. And Greg, who had to leave, was one of the guys I was talking to Monday morning, just trying to help me get through, because I was wound tight yesterday morning, and I feel a lot better now. It's because I was thinking, I'm going to talk about calmness, and I'm about to explode. So,
Well, and hey, John, this is kind of getting off point, but that's a great example too, because I'm in the weeds on that one, because we discussed it during our therapy session.
yeah,
Not that you ever coach me on anything, you just provide a lot of good therapy. Just messing with you, but that's a great example of, it's kind of the who too. That guy, I don't know him from Adam, but he stepped up to the plate where the other thing didn't work out. And that's a great, maybe not a great BNI story, but that's a great story of a lesson.
yeah.
And hey, David Brown, I'm going to give you some props. You said something that resonated in me. I like the fact that you admit this isn't your strength, but you're going to be talking about it. And just right out of the get-go, man, that shows me that you're being honest with yourself and others, and that's appreciative, because the last thing I want to do is go to a seminar and somebody says that he's perfect in what he's talking about, because as soon as they say that, I check out.
Yeah.
It's like, so.
David's my brother from another mother. We're a lot alike. So I'm really glad he's on with us today. All right, I'm going to move on to the second point. And this is resilience strategies. This is a pretty simple concept, but I do a lot of strategic planning conversations, and I use a pretty simple diagram for strategic planning. It looks like this. Strategy is about getting from point A to point B. Point A is where we are today. Point B is where we want to be. And we come up with tactics or goals or objectives or whatever you want to call them, steps to get there. It's the old, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Well, resilience is all about handling a problem or an opportunity. So it's really about applying the same techniques to what we want to do with a problem. So how do we break that down? Well, she has some ways of looking at this that I thought was interesting. And so first is one of our techniques for handling the strategically is accepting. So, the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This serenity prayer has been popular with AA and other 12-step programs, been a lot of prayer journals and things like that. A lot of us have seen posters or whatever of it. It's interesting. I didn't know this about it. It was written by a guy named Reinhold Niebuhr in 1932-33, right in the throes of the Great Depression. And if you think about what they're going through then, how similar is that to what we're going through now? His version was slightly different, but he's giving credit for kind of the modern version of this. And so the Serenity Prayer, first thing it tells you is accept the things that you cannot change. And then, of course, the second strategy is alter the things that you can. So changing things takes courage. But if you can't change something, it just gets frustrating. And I know I've been in situations where I wanted to change, my boss, who maybe was the owner of the company, and that was just wasn't going to happen. And so eventually you go, you know what, I cannot change that. I need to either accept it, or one other method is to reframe it, shift it from a problem, shift that adversity into an opportunity. When I can reinterpret the situation into something more positive, from a mindset standpoint, it gives me now an opportunity to solve a problem. And so accept it, alter it, or reframe it. That's our choices when we're talking about dealing with a problem. For me, I struggle with accepting. I'm a person who I love. I've got a little bit of that high D in me. If you're familiar with DISC, high Ds want to make the decision and drive something to be their way, and when it's not, it gets very frustrating. And so it's hard for me to accept things. And so I find altering and reframing more effective for me. And if I can't, then yeah, usually I'm not one typically to sit in an accepting model for a long time. And those who've worked with me in the past, I saw Jill chuckling when I said that, because she knows it firsthand. Anybody have anything along these lines to share?
You know, John, the hardest thing for me is not for myself, it's for the 3 people who are now working remotely for me and trying to figure out, you know, that balance, I guess, of accepting, trying to reframe, altering their situations and my expectations reasonably.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that each of them has their own circumstances to deal with. So I don't know if that's,
No,
I don't know if that's clear, but that is where I probably lose my calmness from your first slide.
okay, good. So you're trying to help them accept what's going on, and that's been a challenge for you. Is that am I interpreting what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I just think when you're dealing with people from afar, and in this instance, it's much easier to get, when we're even in this conversation, it's easier face to face, but it's, you know, when you're sitting side by side with someone and you're experiencing in a daily environment
Yeah.
things they're dealing with from a business side, and maybe you have a personal side with them.
Right.
It's much harder to do that when you're dealing with those same circumstances.
Very true. Yeah, I was
They're
just
in their home
reading.
environments and they're dealing with things that I have no clue about, when their dog just ate, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, and I was just reading something about empathy and how empathy is so important for leadership. I believe it's one of the most critical traits we have to have, but it's so much harder to be empathetic over video. It's much easier to be empathetic sitting across a desk from someone, especially if they're having a tough time. You can have that conversation. You can really read facial expressions, all those things. It's a lot harder to do it over video. It's better than over the phone. It's better than over text, but it's still not the same as being in person. So it's an extra challenge for leaders right now, no doubt. Good. So going to jump into now the another picture I posed for, by the way. We're going to talk about resilience muscles, and this is really kind of the guts of what resilience is about. We all have muscles within our being, our mental being, if you will, primarily, that help us work through problems and challenges. And each of us have these in different categories or different levels. So these are how she defines them. So first one is positivity. Positivity, you're looking at dangers or problems versus hope and possibilities, you know. And so everybody's on a scale of this, from, and if you want to picture it 1 to 100, you know, you're somewhere in that, or 1 to 10. Let's do 1 to 10. It's easier to think about. Are you a 1 or a 2? That you just always deal with fear and scared. Glass is never half full. Or are you on that other end where, man, the glass is always full, and we're going to get through this situation? I have no doubt about it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm kind of one of those realistic, positive people. I want to be positive. The glass is half full if I can see that it's at least half full. If I think it's only a third full, I struggle saying it's a half full. I'm a little bit of a realist there. Confidence, do we have doubt, or do we underestimate our abilities, or do we have, we recognize our strengths and we try to use our skills for the best. And, confidence is one of those things that too much can take you into arrogance, but not enough can take you into depression, right? So where are you on that scale? Okay. Priorities. Do you tackle too many things? Do you chase the squirrel? A squirrel runs in the room, you're distracted, or can you focus on the most important thing? That's an important trait in fight and being resilient. Creativity. Do you focus? A low number here would focus on tried and true methods. Oh, we've never done it that way. You're not very resilient. Versus, man, let's mindstorm here and generate a whole bunch of ideas on how we can tackle this problem. I bet we can come up with something creative and new. People on the high side of creativity are always looking at a problem is an opportunity to do something new and different. And so creative people have done real well. Like our church, the most creative person on our staff has done fantastic in the stuff that he's doing with music and worship during this pandemic. It took him a week or two to get over the fact he wasn't doing what he normally does. But now that he's tapped into his creative energy, it's some of the things he's doing. Connection is the next one. Do you rely on yourself, or do you build connections and willingly ask for help? Highly resilient people are not afraid to ask for help and guidance. And so this is one of the ones I score low on. I tend to be pretty self-reliant and not asking for help. Then structure. Do you get impatient with details, or do you like to have your day planned out? Do you have your week planned out on Sunday, before it ever starts? The more structure you have, you can systematize what you're doing. You're gonna be more resilient during a crisis. And then experimenting. Do you have to stay in your comfort zone? If you're a low number here, you have to live in that comfort zone. Or are you willing to take risks, try new things? Experimenting and creativity often go hand in hand, but not necessarily. Creativity might be coming up with the ideas, but experimenting is having that courage to kind of go out and actually try the different things. And so these are your resilience muscles, and we're all low and high in some of these. I'm high on 3 of them, middle on a couple of them, and low on a couple of them. And so it's one of those things that recognizing it, then you can start looking at how can I strengthen muscles. We always say tap into your strengths, leverage your strengths, and de-emphasize your weaknesses. But in resilience, this is one of those areas where you actually may want to try to improve some of your weak areas, because it will help you be more resilient. We know that the higher your scores in each of these areas, the more resilient you're going to be. So, if your problem is positivity, practice gratitude and surround yourself with positive people. Positivity is one, like I said, I'm a realist, so I'm kind of middle of the road there. And so my wife and I actually, after this the other day, we're getting this, we've done this before, I think, but we're starting this kind of practicing gratitude. So when we go on our walk after this, we'll talk about some things we're grateful for. Second is confidence. Be a victor, not a victim. At Focal Point, one of the principles we teach is victim mentality versus victor mentality. A victor mentality is an abundance mindset that we can overcome, that that we're not looking to make excuses. We're not looking to blame others. We're looking at how can we be and achieve everything that we have before us. And so having that victor mentality is part of confidence. Priority, part of that is managing your energy. We talked about the 80-20 rule. Those of you who've been on the previous workshop a few weeks ago, I did the area of awesome. That's a way of learning how to focus on the most important task and doing the things that generate energy for yourself versus doing things that waste your energy. And so learning how to prioritize what you're working on is important. If creativity is your weak point, you might want to mindstorm with people and actually tap into and stretch your creative muscles. The hardest thing for a creative person to do is to go self-isolate and come up with a creative solution. You forget it. It's not going to happen. If you're not a creative person, don't go off by yourself and try to make yourself creative. It won't happen. But get somebody like me who is creative, or Jill who's on here is creative. Get one of us in a room with you and talk creativity. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? Get creative. You can come up with ideas. Connections. Seek out mentors, advisors, coaches, and be vulnerable with them. Tell them, hey, here's where I'm struggling, and being honest with them. This is one of those things that, a lot of us who are professionals, a lot of us who are successful struggle with this because we don't want to admit where we're struggling. Structure, plan out your week or day. Use block calendars. Stay focused. I've got a model that I've kind of strayed from. And when I was working on this, I went, yeah, John, you've kind of strayed from this. I have a stay focused mindset, which it's a weekly kind of planner, if you will, that ties from my big vision down to what I'm doing this week on one page. And that helps me prioritize my week. And I know what's happened. I'm home all the time. So why do I need to have a plan? Because everything's just going to get done. Well, no, it doesn't. I find that by Friday, I realize, I didn't tackle those 3 things I really needed to get done. And so just because we're working from home doesn't mean we don't need planners and some structure. And then experimenting, apply your past learnings, but be curious. Stretch into your comfort zone. If one thing I do in these workshops is I'm often teaching on topics that I know I struggle with. Why do I do that? Because preparing for them takes me out of my comfort zone and helps me be better prepared for it. Rob gave me a thumbs up for that, I guess. That was for me, I guess. So, I do that. I do that when teaching classes at church or other things. I mean, if there's something that I'm struggling with, a lot of times that's the topic I'm gonna take on, and so that's kind of part of what experimenting is. It's learning from those things and applying them. So let me shut up here for a second and hear from you guys. Which of these? And I'm actually screwed up. I had a poll set up and I messed it up, so I'm not going to do it now. I had a poll set up. I was going to ask you which ones you struggled with, but let me have a few of you come off mute and tell me which of these muscles do you need to develop?
Hey, Sean, I'm just going to speak on one real quick. Right out of the get-go, you talked about positivity. And, think about it. Positive mindset is always a good start. And my business partner, who is just a complete realist that sometimes is borderline not positive.
He's a one on this, right?
Well, but then I struggle with sometimes I don't want to be around somebody that is glass half full to the point where, it's just never real.
Yeah.
So, I guess me personally, I just want to be authentic in my positive mindset and try not to dissuade the opposite, which are, realistic to the point where it's almost not positive, and then the opposite of that. So I don't know. That's something that that maybe I can work on. And
I would say a 1 or a 2 or a 9 or a 10 in any of these might drive us crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
person who's a 9 on confidence is probably pretty arrogant too. You know, a person who's 9 on experimenting will never ever do something the tried and true way. They're the ones who are like, I know. I'm trying to think of a good example. I know that you should balance your checkbook, but let's just run life differently. Let's experiment with a new way of balancing our bank account. You know, they'll never do anything the tried and true way. And I've worked with people like that, and they drove me crazy as well. So yeah, I think anything in an extreme on this list can be a problem. Anyone
Don,
else? Yeah.
for me, yeah, this is Bob. For me, the one that resonated most strongly for me was the connection theme, and that's largely due to the fact that if I were to back it up several years ago, of all of these, I think that was the one that I saw myself as particularly weak in. I somehow felt that I needed to fight the battles more on my own, and I would struggle through. And somewhere along the way, I took some painful life lessons, but somewhere along the way, I realized that that was a losing proposition. And I realized that it made a whole lot more sense to reach out to some of those folks that I knew on some level could be of benefit, could give me a different perspective, some words of advice. And it didn't matter so much who it was, but simply somebody that I trusted, that I knew well, that I thought knew me well enough that they could offer some good advice. And in many instances, it was a matter of drawing on that from not just one particular person, but maybe 2 or 3, multiple people, and taking the best of what all of them combined were sharing. So I feel like I've made a lot of improvement over the years, coming from a not so strong point on the connection thing.
Yeah, it is an area where people who are successful and self-employed, a lot of us are in roles where we have our own businesses and things like that, and we are often the worst at that. I'm going to offer. Let me see. Does anybody who hasn't spoken yet like to weigh in? I'm not gonna call on anybody. There's a few folks that haven't. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get a thought in. Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to move on into our fourth area. And I mentioned earlier, this resilience is about managing energy. Energy fuels resilience. And when it runs low and we don't have anything to draw on, we can't be resilient. And so energy comes a lot of different ways. And so what I want to share is different categories of resilience. First, there's, different categories of energy. First, there's physical energy. You know, some challenges we can use our physical body to overcome things. You know, we sometimes need to be resilient in just getting things done physically. I don't think that applies quite as much to our current pandemic, but I think we can see some examples of that. Second is mental energy, learning how being able to think clearly and quickly. If you think back to the damper in the building, you know, it doesn't, that giant steel ball doesn't think to react. The building sways one way, it pivots the opposite to keep it level. It's automatic. When you are thinking clearly and quickly, you're kind of like that. It's instantaneous. You are reacting in the moment, clearly and quickly, not panicking. Remember, calm. So calmness still comes into play. But from a mental energy standpoint, we are able to just quickly process and move on and react in real time. The most resilient people, the most highly resilient people are almost instantaneous in how they think and react in the heat of the moment. Emotional. Here's one that probably for me is the biggest challenge, because I do tend to wear my emotions. And so working through difficult feelings, I told you about my example with the loan deal on Sunday. When I get emotional, it's tough. And so I have to really I have to tap into my emotional energy and make that work. That's an area that I can struggle with. And then spiritual, and I appreciate Rob and David. I think both are guys who I know tap into this, connecting with meaning and purpose, whatever that means to you, because this isn't about one particular faith or belief or anything, but we all have the ability to tap into something with more meaning and purpose. And so that spiritual energy is often what gets us through in tough times. And I know a lot of people right now in this current situation are tapping into that in a major way. And so these are 4 areas of energy. And this is kind of the last topic, and we're about on time, running a couple minutes behind. One last time to come off mute and let me hear from you. Where do you all find your energy to be resilient? What are the areas that work for you, and where do you, like me, struggle? Do you have so for me, mental and spiritual are probably my strongest 2, and emotional is my weakest. Physical, I'll just let you all judge that for yourself. But what about you guys? Love to hear from you.
I'll share, John. And by the way, yours should have been physical. You showed us those great pictures of you earlier in the presentation there, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, it is emotional. Even as a minister of 26 years, sometimes connecting with people becomes, the temptation is it's a job, it's my duty. But you got to really connect on an emotional level. And so I think for me, that's always been my challenge, is the emotional. But my strength has always been spiritual. If I don't know what else to do, I just surrender, go pray, and I find strength that way.
Good, thank you, David. Anybody else want to share where you get your energy?
Probably spiritual. I really made it a point to increase my devotional time every day, and find that I perform better and have a much better outlook on life by starting every day talking to God first, and then just keep plowing through.
Yeah, good, thank you. Anyone else?
I would say, my thought, personal life and your professional life, if one is not in sync, it's going to affect the other one. And I find myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually pretty decent if the things I'm doing personally and the relationships I've got are good. That's always going to help me professionally. And then vice versa, if professional life, there's relationships that can be negative, they can affect the personal.
Good.
It's nice to have balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. So love everybody to think about a takeaway item. Anyone have something they're going to apply right now and going to change their resilient mindset? I see David smiling. I want to hear what he has to say.
I just think this is so creative, and I'm grateful for the the slides selection there. But it's great being with other leaders and to know that you're not alone. I think that's important, and I think you had that point about being connected and using that. So I think for me, the takeaway is staying connected with individuals who, not in the self-pity party, but the ones that are going to say, hey, let's get through this together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big part of why I'm doing this. Part of it is because, I can wallow in my own pity party if I wanted to. By doing this, it's stretching my comfort zone a little bit too, getting out here, but also hopefully creating some positive vibes with other folks like yourselves. And so that's a good thing. Anyone else? All right. Well, again, we're moving to the right, and just want to this last slide. First of all, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, a couple of you I don't know, so send me a LinkedIn invite. I'd love to connect with you. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. The book on the right is the book that most of this material came from. I put it into my own, a little bit of my own words, but I haven't read it yet. I bought it after hearing her speak, so I look forward to reading it. I did scan it for a couple of ideas, but again, I'm on LinkedIn. I blog for the most part weekly. I've actually been busy doing other things and haven't blogged quite as much, but got all my contact information there. Snap a screenshot of it if you'd like. Just love to be connected with you and talk about how we can help get through this together. Also, I am doing these every week as long as people keep showing up. And so we've been having around 10 people every week. We had a few have already cut out, but we had I think 15, I believe, 14 or 15 at one point. So I think that's my biggest number yet. It's been in that 10 to 12 range for the most part. So again, I'm gonna keep doing this as long as folks like you show up. I don't know next week's topic. I've been chewing on the idea of just kind of more of a discussion, brainstorming thing of what is the new normal and what do we, what's that going to look like? And I think we all have different perspectives of it. So, and there's some writing out there on it, and some of it's scary. I'll be honest. Some of it's depressing. If people are right, I don't think they are. So, back on my positivity, I'm trying to stay a little more positive on it. But what is the new normal going to look like, and how's it going to impact us from a business standpoint? So that might be the topic next week. That would be more of a mastermind kind of, let's just get some ideas and thoughts together. But again, if you've got ideas, love to hear them. And again, thank you for participating today. It was great to see you all, and hope you have a great rest of your day.